Well, happy Earth Week once again, everybody. Kevin Connor here, and I'm zooming with Bill Bunch, who is the executive director of Save Our Springs Alliance, Austin's water watchdog since, 91, 92,
92.
92. But your organization came from inspired by a city council meeting that went all night long, and there's actually a film about it, isn't it?
There is. And you were there.
I was in.
Prominent closing role.
Well, that's it was so interesting. I was listening on the radio and I said, if they're still going at it when I'm going to work early in the morning, I'm gonna stop by. And it was well worth the effort. You still hear about that. But for those people who may not know, tell them what the Save Our Springs Alliance is all about.
Well, we're a small Austin-based nonprofit environmental advocacy group. We work to protect Barton Springs and the other great springs of the hill country that flow from the Edwards Aquifer. And then more broadly, just work for sustainable water and land protection in Central Texas.
And you've been doing that. The initial threat, I think, to the Barton Springs Aquifer was Circle C. Is that correct?
Well, Circle C was a big one. Even before I got here, and the folks like Save Barton Creek Association and Zilker Park Posse, they raised the alarm when they first built the Barton Creek Square Mall.
Oh, yeah.
And also when they extended Mopac across the river and down, south to 290.
Uh-huh. That's about when I got to town. That was about 40 years ago when they opened up the Barton Creek Mall. It'll be 40 years this summer. So, but one of the things I was reading is that a whole lot of what feeds into the Barton Springs is out in Hayes County, in Western Hayes County, and y'all been doing some work out there too. What's going on?
Well, there's been a huge effort by the city of Austin, Travis County, and Hayes County to buy up land or conservation easements that are perpetual and prohibit development of land, but keep the land privately owned over that part of the watershed that feeds Barton Springs. And yes, the bulk of that area that feeds Barton Springs specifically is in Hayes County. And the bulk of that is neither developed nor protected. So what happens to it is still up in the air.
Neither developed yet or protected yet.
Nor protected. We had a big.
Where exactly is this?
This is west of the I-35 corridor. So right. West of Kyle, west of Buda, west of San Marcos. Dripping Springs and Driftwood area in particular.
Okay. Yeah, but there's a lot of development down there.
There is, thankfully, even though Hayes County is one of the fastest growing counties in the country, most of that development has happened along the I-35 corridor.
Right.
And that's east and downstream of the recharge zone for Barton Springs and San Marcos Springs.
One of the things I was reading about on your website, as far as working with the people in Hayes County, is a legal situation about treated waste going into Onion Creek, which flows through Hayes County and into Travis County, and really is an important waterway in Central Texas. And the court action was a disagreement between the city of Dripping Springs and I guess some developers that they had been working with, and they were wanting to put treated wastewater. And there are lots of uses for treated wastewater, but they wanted some of it to just go directly into Onion Creek. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. The city of Dripping Springs applied to the state TCQ, our environmental agency,
right,
for a permit to allow them to discharge up to 800,000 gallons a day of treated wastewater into Onion Creek. And Onion Creek is the largest source of recharge water for Barton Springs.
So it goes directly to Barton Springs from Onion Creek.
Yes.
Okay, so 800,000 gallons a day.
Yes.
And the argument was, that's okay. It's treated waste. It'll be fine.
Right. And that was the argument. And, there's some merit in the idea that, current technology does treat the wastewater to a pretty high level. But these hill country streams, they're crystal clear.
Right.
And they have virtually no nutrients, natural phosphorus and nitrogen. So you don't get algae growth. And treated wastewater, even if it's treated to a high level, has a lot of nitrogen and phosphorus. And so in our view, that discharge would overwhelm the creek and cause really nasty algae blooms and a range of other problems. So the state issued that permit. Save Our Springs appealed that to the courthouse, and the district court judge who heard that appeal threw out the permit. But now the city's lawyers and the state agency, TCQ's lawyers, have appealed that further.
Okay.
And so that's pending, right? But that's a key case for looking at what happens to all of our hill country streams. If we win, then it will force folks to go back to this land application alternative. If we lose, then we'll see more of these permit applications for discharging treated sewage into our streams.
But they have been able to use treated sewage on land to water lawns and things like that, right?
Yes, and so that's what Dripping Springs has been treating their wastewater and irrigating it for 20 years. And that's what you see. Belterra is the big development that's out on 290. They treat and irrigate their wastewater. A lot of places treat it and irrigate on golf courses. Right. Lost Creek, Barton Creek Country Club, the list goes on. So,
and that's okay, right? In your view?
It's much better than direct discharge. And if it's done right, it works. It protects the creeks. Sometimes those facilities are not as well managed as they should be. And so some of that irrigated wastewater gets in the creek if they're not managed properly.
You mentioned algae blooms, and it's been really kind of frightening to see this pop up in different places. It happened at Lady Bird Lake last year and a few other places. The algae blooms were toxic to dogs, and several dogs died. Is that last summer or the summer before? Excuse me.
I think it was 2 summers ago.
Yeah.
I think they were pretty diligent about telling people to not let their dogs in the lake last summer. That toxic algae component, that's a fairly new phenomenon. And it's a little bit frightening, and the scientists don't really understand it. And just last month, we had this outbreak of toxic algae in Lake Travis, even though the water was cold and it was winter months.
Ooh.
Whereas before, the idea was this is only a concern during the hot summer months.
Right.
So there's something going on there that the scientists don't fully understand at this point.
Nor do the dogs.
The dogs do not understand.
We're supposed to throw the ball. I'm supposed to jump in and get it and bring it right back, and then we repeat.
Right.
That's our thing. What's going on?
And nobody gets sick.
Yeah. Well, let's move a little further in stream. I read an article on the website, the Save Our Springs website, which is sos.org, about the new proposed dramatic changes to the Brody Oaks Shopping Center. This is Lamar at 360. And it was, I think, first built before the SOS ordinance went into place. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. But they're planning, and I remember reading this and go, wow, that sounds really ambitious, planning a huge, excuse me, redevelopment of that shopping center to include, I think, 1,500 apartments and a hotel and all kinds of stuff, and going kind of vertical on the whole thing. So this is the biggest development within the purview, I guess, of the SOS Alliance, something that directly affects Barton Creek, correct?
Yes. And it's the biggest redevelopment project that we've seen in the Barton Creek watershed. So it'll set a precedent for what happens there. We're excited that they are proposing to substantially reduce their impervious cover and add land in effect to the Barton Creek Greenbelt.
Cool.
But there's
again, for people who haven't been keeping up on this stuff, impervious cover is like a parking lot, something that the water can't go through and get down into the ground. It's going to run off somewhere.
Exactly.
And their parking lot before SOS is 30 acres of parking lot.
Yes, I mean it's parking lot and rooftops, but
yeah,
you know it's a sea of pavement down there.
So it's too soon, I guess, for y'all to take a position, but you don't want to be too late. So this is something you really focus on throughout the whole process.
Yes, the details do matter, but and they, as you mentioned, they are going to go vertical, which makes sense to some significant degree. But you know, how high is too high? You know, that's an issue that are concerning the neighborhoods in that area.
Yeah. So they've been working with the neighborhood, so they don't want to just kind of barge in and build this huge development and alienate everybody that lives around there, because those are potentially their customers. So they have to be talking to them.
Yes, that's correct. And it's been a cooperative effort so far.
Good. So there's a good one. I also noticed that the SOS, and Bill Bunch is the executive director, and you have been the executive director since the get-go, right? For almost 30 years.
Pretty close. You know, Bridget Shea, who's our Travis County commissioner these last number of years and was on the city council. She was our first executive director when I was just the lowly staff attorney.
And but there's a thing on the website about the Zilker Park survey. Tell us what that is.
Well, the city is just about to kick off a comprehensive plan for Zilker Park. And so they have posted a survey just to get citizen input on what they think about Zilker Park and what they'd like to see done the same or differently into the future. And so we encourage everybody to go online and take that survey, especially if you're a Zilker Park goer.
Yeah, well, boy, I tell you what, just the other week I drove by, there was no place to park, but it seemed like there must have been some kind of festival going on. There were so many people there, but it wasn't. It was just a pretty spring day, and almost a danger of the place getting loved to death.
Yes, that's a challenge right now. Cars pulling up, you know, when there's not any parking and onto the grass and, and park where they're not supposed to.
Yeah.
We absolutely need better, you know, public transit access to the park, and figuring out the parking situation is going to be a key challenge in this planning process.
We're talking with Bill Bunch from Save Our Springs and the Save Our Springs Alliance. And one of the things, as you're well aware, is the great growth in Austin and Central Texas. And people find out about Barton Springs and they say, whoa, this is cool. Let's go here. Oh, this is really cold, but I like it. So the usage of the Barton Springs pool area is growing as the city grows. What is the the most important thing that you want to educate people about Barton Springs that they should know uh, when they come into town? Why is it
Well,
important? Why is it important?
right.
Why have you
The most
devoted your life to it?
right. The most important thing for folks to understand is that, you know, the portion of the Edwards Aquifer that feeds Barton Springs is more vulnerable to pollution than any other aquifer in the state of Texas. And the thing we've been working at for years, uh, due to that fact, is to minimize the development in the watershed.
Right.
And the best way to do that now is to just buy up as much of the land that's undeveloped in that watershed, mostly in Western Hays County, as soon as we can. And
Mm-hmm.
so support the, when you're asked to vote for land acquisition bonds, do that. And Travis County will probably have another bond election next year. That's a critical point. Austin has approved some bond money a year and a half ago that they're still spending. Hays County voters voted in November almost 70% for bonds, $75 million of bonds to buy both parkland and conservation easements. And that's county-wide, but the bulk of that will be over the Edwards Aquifer and help protect that part of the watershed forever.
So you actually have Travis County tax dollars buying land in Hays County so that it won't be
Well,
developed?
not Travis County tax dollars, but we have City of Austin tax dollars.
Oh, okay. All right.
Buying land outside the city in Hays County, with full support of Hays County officials and Hays County voters, because pretty much everybody wants to see that area preserved forever and development minimized.
And going back to what you said, that it's prone to pollution more than other parts of Texas, is basically just because of the kind of rocks that we have here in the Barton Springs.
Yes, that
Recharge zone.
geology, the geology is that, you know, karst or cave forming limestone,
Yeah.
where the water that's flowing in those creek bottoms, you know, plunges through fractures and sinkholes and flows very rapidly through open channels straight to the springs. And there's virtually no natural filtering of that water along the way. So what happens at the surface comes out at the springs.
And it's pretty easy to test too. You can drop something out in the outlying area, maybe some dye or something like that, and then
Right.
you can find it in the pool not too far down the line.
That's right. Yeah, back in the 80s, they were published reports by experts that it would take 3 years for rainfall that infiltrated out on the watershed to reach Barton Springs. And then there were dye tracing studies done later and found that it was 3 days.
Wow. Wow.
Not 3 years. So that shows you, you know, there's underground channels where the water's flowing rapidly to the springs.
So one of your opportunities and challenges with the Save Our Springs Alliance is to educate people, not only newcomers, but people who've grown up here might really not know all of the interesting facets. And so you have Barton Springs University, and it used to be one day, but you're trying to expand on it, right?
Yes, our Barton Springs University is our umbrella for our education activities. And we have a full day event at Barton Springs set for September 21st this year. The public's invited. It's free to go to the springs that day.
Mm-hmm.
But we're also publishing now educational videos that are on our Barton Springs University website, leading snorkel tours and walking tours to get people directly and up close and personal with these incredible water resources that we're so blessed to have right here in the heart of our city.
So you must run into people at some point and say, Bill, why are you fighting this fight for 30 years? Just dam it up and make it a pool. It'll be fine. Nobody will know. Well, you probably actually heard something like that, I would imagine, over the years.
Right.
What is the importance of Barton Springs? What makes it unique?
Well, I mean, the city literally would not be here but for Barton Springs. The capital was located here in large part because Barton Springs provided a reliable and abundant source of water
Really?
for a new town. It's the heart and soul of our city. It's where everybody's welcome, get visitors and residents alike, all shapes, all colors, rich and poor, etc. And you just go, and once you're in your bathing suit, we're all the same. We're all equal. And it's just a spectacularly beautiful place. And right now, since we haven't had any big storms lately to stir up the aquifer, the water's just crystal clear.
Really?
And so we invite folks to go. We keep doing it because we're still making a difference, and not as much as we should be making, but we make a difference. And because, as I sort of said earlier, a big chunk of the watershed is still up for grabs.
Yeah.
To either be preserved or developed.
Right.
And so, the future of the springs, whether they're going to be saved or not, is really still up for grabs.
All right. Well, I think you do really great and important work. I have to ask that question, what's so important about Barton Springs? But I know, I mean, it is a unique thing to have a flowing springs pool right in the middle of a major city. We weren't a major city maybe when SOS started, but we're a major city now. And to be able to maintain that, and as you said, the water quality is good right now, and it changes with weather conditions, but the water quality is good. So it's pretty amazing. Is there anything even comparable in another major American city to have the kind of a spring-fed natural pool like this?
Not that I know of. Not a big city. I mean, San Marcos Springs. San Marcos is a smaller town, but it's a similar, giant spring flowing out of this beautiful limestone rock right into town. And I encourage people to go snorkel the San Marcos River as well. It's spectacular, and we do quite a bit of work in partnership with the San Marcos River Foundation.
San Marcos is booming too.
Yeah, we're lucky to have Barton Springs, and it's because of this unique limestone geology that brings this beautiful hill country rain right into the city.
Yeah. How often do you get to go to Barton Springs yourself?
Well, in the summer, I'll go every day, and if I'm lucky, I'll go twice a day. And in the winter, I'm not a hardcore everyday swimmer like some folks, but I'll usually go once or twice a week during the winter.
Oh, really? That often?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I live near Barton Springs. I'm at a key place halfway between the Saxon Pub and Barton Springs.
Oh, that's a good location. That's a really good location. Well, Bill Bunch, the executive director of Save Our Springs, every day is Earth Day with this organization. Every day is Barton Springs Day with this organization, and you do good work, and I thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Kevin. We love Sun Radio, and you've been a great friend of the Barton Springs for many years. We appreciate it.